Hello everyone. Welcome to another Money Spaces with Kalu. My name is Kalu Aja. Thanks for joining us from wherever you are in the world, Europe, Africa, Middle East, anywhere. We welcome and we appreciate you taking some time off your Saturday to just hang out with us today. So on this show, we talk money, personal finance, investing, the economy, and we try to make it about you. So I want to talk about big economic words, right? But the whole idea is that we make it, how does it matter to you? How can you use it? Why is it important that you know it? That's essentially what we're trying to do. And of course, if you're not Nigerian, just to give you a heads up, I mean, there's a build up to the Nigerian elections that's going to happen sometime next year. I think it's February 2023. So we're trying to also focus on the economic side, the big issues, right? We want to make sure that Nigerians have, should we say, um, the right mindset to select their next CEO, right? What questions should they ask? What should they know about? And it's that drives us to do this series of the economics and the politics, giving you guys the economic indicators, having this discussion so that you guys can then understand how the country is doing. So hopefully that would allow you or equip you to select the next CEO and also just to know and to also know where to invest. Today it's my pleasure. I've got Tunde Leya. He's from SBM Intelligence. If you don't know, they are Nigeria's leading risk and economic research firm. But I'm going to let him introduce himself. Hey, Tunde, can you come off mute? Just give us a brief intro. Tell us who you are, what SBM does, and then we'll take it from there. Welcome.
Right. Thank you very much, Kalu. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining this conversation. I do look forward to having a very solid time on this conversation, and I hope it will be very enlightening. My name is Tundele, and I'm a partner with SBM Intelligence. SBM Intelligence, like Kalu has mentioned, is a geopolitical um, risk research firm that is based in Nigeria, covers much of West Africa and Central Africa. And our area of expertise is to research the knotty and hard issues that most people are unable to find actual data for, go into the field. We have physical presence across the country, and we are able to get data from some of the hardest places in the country and on some of the most difficult topics. And then we try to make sense of it, in a way that will make all the stakeholders, the general public, policymakers, the international community, civil society, everybody that is a stakeholder in the Project Nigeria and Project Africa, to be able to make sense of what's really going on, in the hope that it will help them make the right decisions. So decisions around mitigating the risks that are identified, decisions around the kinds of policies, and the kind of policy responses and the policy options that are available for them to choose, decisions around the kind of advocacy to focus on, and decisions around, how to manage personal investments in yourself to deal with all of the headwinds that we identify. So this is what we do in a nutshell. And hopefully we can bring that expertise to this conversation and make the economy about you and equip you to be able to make a decision, the right type of decisions as we go into the 2023 elections. Thank you very much.
I like that, and they make it all about you. I really like that you guys do the nitty gritty and make it all about you. Great, great stuff. Great intro. So let's get right into it, right? On a scale of, let's just take the scale that we use in school, A, B, C, and F, right? How would you score the Nigerian economy right now on just that scale, A, B, C, or F? What's your take on the Nigerian economy, big picture?
Big picture, the Nigerian economy is definitely at an F at the moment,
Jeez.
and it's quite unfortunate. Yeah, it's definitely an F. If you had given it the wider scale, maybe I would have said an E. But since it's A, B, C, and F, then it's an F at the moment. And there are many reasons for that, right? one of the most fundamental reasons is Nigeria is widely believed to be an oil exporting economy, and that's how it makes its money. Um, Normally, the oil is a commodity, and there's usually commodity cycles
Mm,
where there's a boom and a bust cycle of every commodity. And we've had a couple of boom and bust cycles in Nigeria's history since we started pumping oil at any scale in the 1970s, right after the Civil War.
yeah,
For every other boom cycle that Nigeria has undergone, Nigeria has Nigeria's economy has strengthened. Nigeria's economy seemed to be performing. Most of the indices, most of the macroeconomic indices were looking good at those times. Inflation was down, FX rates improved, there was government revenue, there was enough to spend. In fact, in some cases, there was wastage. If you remember the Gowon windfall that we had,
yeah,
where there was, cement just sitting at the port, and we had the Gulf War windfall as well under President um, Babangida.
yeah.
And of course, we had the boom under Goodluck Jonathan as well. But this is the first time where Nigeria, that is an oil economy, is in a period where there is boom. There is a report that states that Saudi Arabia in this period is making $1 billion per day.
Billion
Um,
a day.
$1 billion per day, yes. And that's the experience of most oil economies at the moment because of what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. And so everybody is energy hungry and oil economies are benefiting. This is the first time in Nigeria's history where Nigeria is in a oil boom period, but Nigeria is benefiting nothing from that oil boom. There is
Wow.
no windfall. Currency is not strengthening. Inflation is not going down. The government revenues is not improving. There is no massive infrastructure spend. In fact, the government is borrowing and servicing debt with borrowing at the moment. So all of that says that fundamentally there is a structural change that has happened under the current administration that has made Nigeria's economy incapable of even enjoying the one benefit it enjoys as an oil economy. That's just symptomatic of why it was called
Mm.
this F on,
So,
you know.
let's drill down if you don't mind. Can you hear me though? So I get a bit of
Yes, I
echo.
can.
Okay, so we had the IBB Gulf War windfall, like you said. We've had the Go On, should we say, the when the Saudis did their overall embargo, right? We've had that, and Nigeria was able to save. Nigeria was able to get around that. We made a lot of revenues. What is this fundamental difference? Now, you use the word structural and fundamental. Do you want to break it down for us? What's going on now? Why is now different, if I may?
Thanks a lot. I think first, if we think about macroeconomics, and it's one of those things that as economists are wont to do, economists don't usually have one answer for everything, right?
Mm,
We like to argue about everything. There are just very few things that we have answers on. So, what we measure as macroeconomic indices is also some people measure 10 things, some people measure 5 things, some people measure 6 things, but I like to use 4 things that I think are like the headline things that everything sort of fits into. This will be inflation because it's just an aggregate of the competitiveness of that economy and how it's able to produce and why prices are going up and what structurally is driving inflation. Usually is an indicator of the culmination of policies because price is a signal, right? The second is usually employment. So unemployment or employment numbers, are people getting jobs? Are people being able to seeking work and finding work, which is an indication that, the economy is able to provide and absorb the people and it's growing.
Yeah.
The third is usually just economic growth and productivity. How is the economy growing? If look, people will say things like sometimes economies grow without having economic development, but the truth is that growth is a precursor to development. So if the economy is growing, then there's a much more likely chance that it's going to develop. And the fourth, of course, is balance of payments, which will just speak to trade in the economy, both exports and imports, and how healthy the economy's current accounts and reserves and all of those kind of things are. And those usually are a good way to look at, the way the economy is performing on a macro level, and then
Yeah.
its impacts on the micro level, right? Um, so all of these things, right? Normally, oil oil exports, oil revenues will impact them because they impact government revenues, and government is usually one of the biggest spenders in the Nigerian economy.
Yeah.
However, what we find is that in this scenario is that one, the extraction of oil that we had, where we were able to make up our quota and we were even pushing above our quota, all of a sudden Nigeria is unable to make up its extract oil extraction quotas. And people have blamed things like lack of investment over the years in the oil and gas sector. People have blamed things like that sector, the key critical legislation that needs to have happened in that sector for a long time has not happened.
Yeah.
And some of it happened now, but it's very late and it's not complete and all of that. Um, People have also blamed the fact that oil theft is now essentially organized crime in Nigeria
Mm.
at an industrial scale, up to the level where there are estimations that about one third of the daily production goes to oil thieves. And eh, if we think about one third of Nigeria's daily production, the logistics that will go into being able to steal that and sell that is not some petty boys that are in the creeks and angry. It is a very, very significant operation, like significant corporate operation. It's not
Yeah.
a thing. So all of these um, types of things have made Nigeria incapable of one of the most basic things: take oil out of the ground and sell. And that's the first sort of structural issue that has been that has come out. The second that you see is that now there are some tools that you use to control some of these indices. So, for example, inflation, normally when you move interest rates and you do those kinds of things, you're supposed to be able to impact inflation, right?
Yeah.
But we've seen that in Nigeria, because what is driving inflation is not any of those things. The tools that are available to policymakers, that especially the monetary policy guys, that they are trying to use to control inflation has not really, really worked, because the real things that are driving inflation are different from those things. So that's number two. Number three is, as a country, right? Nigeria seems to have two policy priorities, one on the fiscal side and one on the monetary side.
Yeah.
One is to control the price of petrol. And so Nigeria seems to be ready to sacrifice, the Nigerian government seems to especially increase more under the current administration,
Yeah.
seems to be ready to sacrifice every other economic index as long as it can try to defend and control the price of oil, of
Mm.
petrol in the country. The second that seems to be the strategic priority is to control the price of foreign exchange, the dollar rate. Unfortunately, these two things are things that the Nigerian government and the Nigerian economy has zero real control over.
Mm. Mm.
So if you match these two things, what created the illusion of control before was the ability to earn FX from extracting oil.
Mm-hmm.
once that ability seems to there's a break in that ability now where Nigeria is unable to benefit from $100 per barrel, all of a sudden that illusion is shattered. And that's why we seem to be having a runaway FX problem, and we're having
Gotcha.
a runaway problem in terms of just um ballooning fuel subsidy. So
Tunde,
these are some of the
let me
issues.
jump in and ask you a question. You've sort of like given us the structural and the macro. And if I hear what you're saying, Nigeria's output has fallen. And because Nigeria's output has fallen, our ability, when I mean our, the federal government's ability to control these other macro indices by having lots of forex pour in has depreciated. Hence, they've lost control of the macro side. So there's no dollars coming in because oil output is lower. Hence, they can't control the FX, they can't control the import side and all that. Is that the summary of what I'm hearing you say? I want to ask a question of this.
That's like a major part of it. There are a couple of other things.
No, I want
Policy
to ask you,
choices and
yeah, let me ask you this question before you go on, right? So,
good.
which has come first? Is it that production fell, hence we lost forex, hence we can't control the indices, or we can't control the indices, and then we're having this? It has then led to the corruption that has driven this fall in production because your production cannot fall, like you said, from what we were producing 3 years ago to what we are producing today without a statewide organized effort to steal crude oil. This is not like a barrel being or a pipeline being broken into. This is an industrial scale theft of the resource. It's no longer theft, really. I think it's if we could push this today, this looks more like policy that you could say that Nigeria is losing a substantial part of her crude revenues. Which has come first in your take?
Okay, I think it's a cycle, right, where each reinforces the other. That's sort of how you look at it. So, um, if we go back a bit further, to when under the Obasanjo government they created the excess crude accounts. And while Obasanjo claims he left 22 billion dollars in that account, I think it's been corrected to about $9 billion thereabouts. And so at that time, apart from um, taking from oil, there was also that to sort of buffer the economy. And Goodluck Jonathan's administration used that. Yaradua plus Goodluck Jonathan used that in the 2008 into 2010 global recession depression that we had. Um, and then they were able to rebuild that up. Now, what has happened is that over time, there has been a cycle where policy choices have essentially constricted production and also constricted and also impacted all the other indices. I'll give an example just to illustrate this. So, when we talk about one of the key indices of macro is inflation, right? And
Mhm.
attempts to control inflation is always. But when we looked at what was driving inflation from 2016, 2017, they were not any global. They were not exactly global issues. They were more policy choices. We did have a recession that impacted, but there were more policy choices, things like the border closure, things like those kind of things. So if you looked at the inflation in that period, the biggest component, the biggest driver was food inflation
Mhm.
because we were doing things like closing the border, banning import of
Wow.
poultry, banning import of rice and all of that, and food inflation just went through the roof. Now, those policy choices then began to constrict the space, if you may. And then people began to make these decisions around, okay, where else can we find? What I think has happened, and you sort of summed it right, that is almost a policy problem. So prior to this period, what would happen is that all of the oil will be extracted. A small fraction of it will be stolen, but most of it will be extracted and sold. And then from the crude oil takings that comes into the government coffers, People that will then extract, quote and unquote, share the national cake at the time. And the but what has happened is people because it seems that the national cake is has been constricted, is reducing. People have decided that for them to continue to be able to get the kinds of monies or the kinds of um, shares they used to get from the national cake before,
Yeah.
the best way is to make sure that none of that money goes into the government coffers, you see, so that it just goes directly into their pocket.
So now you got to say this in a way that Nigerians will get you. Nigerians that don't say it. I want to say it a bit direct because I hear you. I want you to say it in a way that folks listening will get exactly what you are saying.
Okay. So let me try and use an analogy that will be very this thing. So assume that like um a man has four wives. That's Nigeria. That man is Nigeria, has four wives. And what will happen before is if he would he would work, he will get his salary, whatever that salary is, and they will then share it amongst the four wives. And they would all live on that. And one of the wives was able to find a way to get a bigger share of the man's salary, but he will still share. Imagine that rather than the man coming home and calling his wives and saying, "Let me share," one of the wives now devises a way to go to the man's bank and just tell the bank that
Uh,
I'm not waiting for the money to come into this man's hand. Bank manager, just give me one third of his money
uh,
before he even gets it.
gotcha,
That's what's happening. That's what's happening.
gotcha. So this is the structure now. This is the
That's
structure now. The
that's the
structure.
structure.
And the structure has collapsed the macro space. We talked about the food crisis at the border that has moved inflation initially higher before it then caught up with the global inflation now. So we're now part of
Mhm.
that global, but initially the seeds were the border closure that pushed food prices upwards. If we go back to where you're talking about your 4 point inflation, the economic growth, productivity, balance of payments, on all these four, I know you're just on an inflation. On economic growth, it's anemic. We're doing now less than two. We were complaining of 6% 4 year, or I mean 6 years ago. Is it no about 10 years ago, right? Six
Yeah,
percent, 8%. That was, I mean, 6%. Then we were complaining that listen, we are doing 6%. Now we can't even break 2, 3. But productivity, you always use with this analysis. If you go anywhere and you see a guy in an elevator operator. That's my way of knowing if that society has high productivity or very, very low productivity. If you travel anywhere in the US or in the UK, anywhere in the West, you don't see elevator operators. You might see them at high, very, very Fifth Avenue apartments. I've got the doorman and the very expensive apartment that those guys are there just to ask a concierge. But if you go to Abuja, you see elevators, you see an elevator operator. That just shows you how cheap labor is and how low productivity is that we have to have a guy operating an elevator, right? So we have that all across the place. Underemployment, low productivity, and then to your final point, the balance of payments. Nigerians are importing a lot. So all this together is now the macro side. So these two forces are sort of punching the Nigerian in the middle and squeezing him down, right?
hmm correct, correct, correct. And I mean, I think Nigerians feel the impact, have felt the impact for a while.
Yeah.
One of the best anecdotes I usually give about this was I was having a conversation with like people. I started my career in banking, right, and early 2000s, and at that time, it was around when Soludo was doing his banking reforms, 2002 into 2003, thereabout. So he got into banks were beginning to become one of the highest paying in the economy, and you got into banking and you were earning 120 between 120 and 180,000 as a fresh graduate, right? But that was the equivalent of about, if I'm not about $1,500 to $2,000 at the time. So as a fresh graduate, right, at that time, and there were not a lot of restrictions on how we could pay or all of these FX restrictions that we have now, where you can't pay up to $20 a month on many cards and all that.
Yeah.
And I was telling these young guys that I could travel, whenever I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
The car that I drove was, I mean, we walked into, and we had choices. Said we would go and we would say, which should I buy? Should I buy a Honda or a Ford or a Toyota or and the Nissan guys would beg and would be doing all the shakara, like to the Nissan guys, like who drives a Nissan? And we're talking about brand new cars for fresh graduates here. This is 2004, 5, 6, 7, that period. For a lot of them, right? Unfortunately, wages have not grown significantly since that time. So let's say a fresh banking graduate was on 120 to 180 at the time. A fresh banking graduate now is not on more than 250,000 naira per month. But you see, 250,000 naira is about $500 in the equivalent. So that fresh graduate cannot dream of travel to the UK or the US or Dubai as they want. They can't even dream. Many of them are unable to dream of a Tokumbo. A Tokumbo, that's a fairly used car, an imported car. Many first buy a Nigerian used car that is 11, 12, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
At the time, we were raising our turning our noses up to buying Nissan cars. Like, oh, it has to be a Toyota or a Honda, please. We can't do Nissan or Kia. What's Kia? So, for many of them, for many people now, that reality is the impact of these years of this macro things buffeting us, the policy issues, where many people are unable to, people that will change their cars every 2 years. And I'm using this car example because it's very easy to
Yeah.
conceptualize. All of a sudden, you're unable to replace the car that you bought 3 years ago because the replacement, an older model of what you're driving, is more expensive than what you bought your car 3 years ago. So for a lot of people, what has happened to them is for the past 4 years, for the first time since 2000, we've had GDP per capita declining. We've had purchasing power declining. We've had um, people unable to afford many things. I'll give one other example again because inflation is like the first one that touches people. So it's a very easy
Yeah.
example. And we have the Jollof Index that we use to track
Yeah.
this.
I want to talk about that. Yeah. Mhm.
When we started doing Jollof Index in 2016,
And Tunde, not to interrupt you, watch your audio. I don't know if you're moving around, but watch your audio. Yeah, come right
no,
back.
I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm actually sitting in one place.
Okay.
Um, when we started doing Jollof Index in 2016, the estimate was that for a family of 5 to 6 people, which is the average family size in Nigeria, that if you wanted to make a good pot of jollof, you would spend about 3,500, 3,700 thereabouts, depending on where you are in the country. The last Jollof Index that we did, um, in some parts of the country, to do a good plate of jollof in that the same ingredients and the same, you would spend in some cases more than 3 times that amount. Now,
Mm.
about 9,000 naira to do that single pot of jollof. This is 2016 to now. Um, in economics, what happens when a commodity becomes too expensive in terms of price is that people go and look for substitutes. So as we did research, right, when the rice policy happened and rice went from 8,000 naira to about 25,000 naira, we saw a lot of people move their staples, what they ate most of the time at home, from rice to spaghetti. So you saw an offshoot in spaghetti consumption and a drop in rice consumption in many homes because many people essentially began to use rice as spaghetti as a substitute for rice, as a cheaper substitute. So they could prepare it in all the ways they would prepare rice, with stew, with vegetables, as jollof spaghetti, and all of those things. But what we're observing again now is that even spaghetti, which was supposed to be a cheaper alternative, has gone out of the reach of many of the Nigerians again. So people are already searching for alternatives. And these are just two examples of basic things like food that shows the impact of many of these macro on the pockets of Nigerians, generally speaking.
So Tunde, if a Nigerian family is spending about 9,000 for the same pot of jollof rice that they spent years ago, and wages have stayed stagnant, right? From when was minimum wage 30,000? I believe it was this administration. Let's say they've been stagnant since 30,000. How are Nigerians surviving without the minimum wage going up and food prices going up, PMS going up? Is there a black economy that you guys are seeing? How does a civil servant at grade level 14, working in, say, Ministry of Environment in Enugu State, how is that family surviving in Nigeria today? Do you guys have any insight when you do your surveys on what's going on in Nigeria, how people are paying their bills?
Absolutely. So there are a couple of behaviors that have emerged. So first is that people search for substitutes and people adjust consumption. Those are like the first two. And the example I gave around moving from rice to spaghetti, or moving to heavier foods like swallow, which are cheaper to make, and then cutting down on things that are expensive and essential like protein from meals have been behaviors that we've seen. Or that's one. Number two that we've seen, of course, is that people have taken to looking for alternatives in addition to what they do already. So somebody has a job, but he's doing side hustles have really, really grown. But many of the side hustles are essentially hand to mouth side hustles because purchasing power is already low.
Yeah.
We've also seen that there's been an upswing in people taking loan shark credits. So that's why you've seen the growth in
Interesting.
all of these, lending apps, and USSD borrowers and all of these unlicensed apps that has even driven some people to suicide in some cases.
Very interesting.
Um, that's another behavior um, that we've seen. We've also seen people essentially having to make decisions and scaling back on important things like education,
Whoa.
scaling back on important things like um, even healthcare in some cases, just to be able to do what they consider more basic, like feeding, like at least still going to work when they have work and all of that. Of course,
Okay.
you've also seen the upsurge in criminality, where
Sure.
and all of these things are linked, where people have essentially decided that a good way to make money is to engage in criminality like kidnapping. One of the things our research throws up is that most of the kidnapping in the South is more entrepreneurial. People are trying to do business in the South with kidnapping. It's a different thing that is driving kidnapping up north, but in the South is more entrepreneurial, trying to get some money and all of that. And all of these are things that happen
Wow.
when people are beginning to be pushed to the wall and they are unable to just afford, to make a living.
Wow, Tunde. I mean, two things you said have struck me that I had not linked before. The rise in these loan apps, right? These new loan apps, they are everywhere. I did a report on them with David some time ago. They are everywhere. They reach into everywhere, and really everyone is one way or the other involved in this loan shark. And the second point you made is really let's talk about it. You said kidnapping and the crime in quote in the south is more of entrepreneurial folks trying to make a living, but in the north is more of, should we say, state actors, insurgency, security. That's an interesting distinction.
Yeah, and this comes from research work that we've done, where if you look at the approach to kidnapping in the north, for example, You see things like mass kidnappings, um, and then attempts at ransom, but there are also attempts at political statements, at trying to get prisoner swaps and those kinds of things. That tells you that the drivers of kidnapping in that place is different from down south, where what you have is targeted kidnappings and trying to extract money from the relatives of the person. That's like the primary driver. There's not there's not a lot of ideology or politicking or political statements or demanding of prisoner swaps and those kinds of things. So
Mhm.
it's a lot more entrepreneurial in the
Mhm.
south than it is
Yeah.
in the north.
Just,
Now that doesn't
just,
mean
yeah.
that the
It-
guys
It's,
will not go on.
yeah, it's good you give us that clarification. Yeah, Tunde, your audio is Tunde, your audio is very
Yeah.
bad.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to go over that again or is it
Yes.
fine? Okay. So the point I made was that for a lot of folks for a lot of the kidnap incidents in the north, you find that they're making political statements. They're trying to get things like prisoner swaps. You get more mass kidnappings. Um, and a lot of the kidnap stems from control of areas and people venturing into the areas that these non-state actors control. And they are certain control and doing those kinds of things. But in the south, what you get is more targeted kidnappings where the primary driver is trying to extract extract money from the relatives of the people. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly. Yeah, that's fine, Tunde. I
All
think
right.
that gives a lot of clarity to that comment. So, I mean, we can talk about the economics, right, all day. And I think folks get the picture. It's a bad situation in terms of the outlook. The outlook is dark and cloudy. But let's go back and touch on this industrial scale oil theft you speak about, and it's only because you guys are security based and also economic based. That's SBM intelligence, right? What's your take on what's going on with the oil theft in Nigeria? I don't think it's just a simple case of some guys got a truck, broke a pipe, and are siphoning 50,000 barrels a day. It's down. If you look at the report from the Ministry of Finance, you clearly see that production is down or output is down. And that's what has driven should we say, the debt servicing now exceeding revenues. It wasn't that debt service really grew that much. It grew, but revenues crashed. So when you do that ratio, you then have this situation where debt servicing has now overtaken the crashed revenues. Do you have any intake? I'm talking about the security side. What's going on in the oil, that side of the business? What's going on today? Do you guys have any insight?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted.
No, you're fine.
All right. Okay. So in that sector, right, I think it started from the kind of truce that was reached. And what I mean by that truce is that for initially, what the Niger Delta guys will do will be to bust pipelines, to stop production, to try to demand kidnap for ransom, and all of that. And then they did the amnesty type things. But a couple of people realized that a lot more, it was a lot more money for them if everybody in that value chain, both the guys securing and the guys that were causing the violence before, all cooperated. So if you think about it in the terms of the Mexican cartel, at some point, Joaquin Guzman, I think that's his name, was the one that talked to all the cartels and said, guys, instead of fighting, like um, let's have this like almost like a commission where we've divided territory and everybody knows what they're doing and we're all cooperating and we get the state actors that we can to cooperate with us and all of those kinds of things. And that sort of meant that they could do a lot more and boost revenues for them. And that's exactly the scenario that is playing out, that has played out in that part. Now, because of the excuse me, because of what has been experienced as the Nigerian state, where things are shrinking as well, then everybody began to say, you know what? And this is the impression that you get if you speak to some of these guys. Everybody began to say, you know what? Maybe rather than trying to let money go first into the government coffers and then we share from there, we have to do contracts, we have to inflate budgets. Why are we stressing ourselves this much? Let the money just come directly into our pockets.
Who are these guys?
It's a
Sorry to put you on the spot. Are these guys states, like states, or are they individuals, or are they the security guys? Can you say that? Who are these folks?
now it's and yes, you are putting me on the spot. but to be very honest, it's like I've just pointed out, it's a value chain
Values.
where you can't exactly where it's not one of the actors, but it's a combination of these actors that you've actually former militants to security guys who are meant to carry out security operations
Mm,
to even people that are part of the state,
mm,
are actually part of the state and part of the political elite,
mm.
all just believing that it's a better deal to organize this thing
Gotcha.
and
Gotcha.
get extract more. Many people don't get the scale of it. So the whole Nigerian state, right? Before prior to now, the highest the Nigerian state has exported in terms of production is $2.1 million per barrels per day. That's the highest, and that was under I think Goodluck Jonathan. That's the highest we've ever really done as a state. As at around Buhari's beginning, we were doing like 1.8, 1.9 million barrels per day. As of today, we're doing 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day.
Wow. That's a million
If we
barrels?
if we make an assumption that we were still having Buhari beginning level productions 1.8, 1.9 million barrels, it means that we're losing somewhere around 600,000 to 700,000 barrels per day to oil
Wow.
theft.
Wow.
The, and if you think about all the oil companies that have to come together to be able to push out that 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day, all of the infrastructure, all of the jetties, all of the things at Forcados and all those places, for us to be able to export 1.2, 1.3 million barrels, you can imagine the kind of structure, financing, and infrastructure, and even payment processes that goes into pushing out 600,000 to 700,000 barrels per day. That's why I say that it's not a few boys gathering together. It's organized on a much bigger scale than
Mm.
many people are willing to admit.
Mm. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, we've read the papers, we've seen the CEO. I mean, we've seen Tony Elumelu complain. We've seen many CEOs complain that they are getting nothing from their investments in oil and gas on stream in Nigeria. So the numbers are there. The experience is being related, and we're putting figures to it. So it's organized crime more or less. The violence is down, but the theft is up, and more or less some folks are eating 600,000 barrels a day. This could pay ASU, this could fund railways, this could pay down our debts, this could pay new minimum wage. But as we said, 600,000 minimum is just going into the thin air. Crazy. Tunde, so guys, I just reset the room. I'm talking with Tunde from SBM Intelligence. If you don't know them, they're Nigeria's foremost risk and I don't know how to call it, risk and economic analysis or research firm. We're just talking about the Nigerian economy. Tunde has more or less given us the summary, the structural and the macro. There's a structural problem, there's a macro problem. We, the Nigerian citizens, are in the middle and we're being squeezed. I mean, wages are down, productivity is down, consumption of Nigerian workers is also down, security or insecurity is up. The whole macro picture is not doing well. So, Tony, let me just, before I allow folks to speak and to ask you questions, give me the positive side, right? What is the positive picture or the positive framework? What can happen if we get a new president in 2023? Can this be fixed? How does success look to you?
Thanks a lot. And thanks a lot for the opportunity to discuss this outside the wall of my office with the team. One of the things about Nigeria that can be exasperating is that some of the things that need to be done to quickly turn things around are very obvious and are very straightforward. Which is and you know that there's people smart enough in the government to recognize it, but it's just not done. So I'll talk about them, but I'll then talk about the fact that what's most important is someone that has the political will to actually do these things. Because many of them are clear, many of them are known, but it's just a case of is there political will to do them right. So I think the first is um, the obsession with control of things that we don't have control over
Mm,
needs to quickly go away. So today, when we started tracking, when we're looking at fuel subsidies, um, about 3 4 years ago, it was 350 billion naira. As at this year, it's projected to be getting to 6.2 or 6.7 trillion naira.
oh my God.
And the context of that is that Nigeria struggles to crack 2 trillion in government revenues as of today. So we will be borrowing to fund petrol subsidies. So it's very clear that one of the first things that need to go is subsidizing. And the worst thing about petrol subsidies in Nigeria is that if you put numbers to it, less than 10 people are actually the people benefiting financially from petrol subsidies. So when we put those two things together, clearly that's one of the things that need to go. The second thing that needs to happen is the obsession with controlling the FX rate. We can see a lot of the imbalances that occur in the Nigerian economy as a result of the attempt or the desire to control FX. Just recently, Emirates wrote a letter that they are reducing the number of flights they are doing in Nigeria because they are unable to move their FX out. And many of the other airlines are following suit. And what's the driving force of this? There's an agreement between the airlines, international airlines, and the central bank, where the central bank insists that they sell their tickets in naira at the official rate. And the commitment that the central bank gives them is that when they need to move their monies out, the central bank will provide the dollars at the official rate as well. So there is no loss. But of course, because the central bank doesn't have the dollars any longer, they're unable to meet that commitment. And the airlines are unwilling to lose 200 naira on every dollar that they move out if they're going to move it out at the unofficial rate. So these kinds of imbalances show up in different places in the economy because we are obsessed with controlling FX rate. So not a full float, but maybe a crawling peg like Bobby Augusto suggested is the second thing. Now, there are a couple of policy problems as well that can be very quickly reversed. Something as simple as just reversing these bans on importing things that are staples or them accessing effects, rice, poultry, um, what's that? Maize,
Yeah.
corn, all of those staple foods that we need. That will drop the prices of those things. That will begin to tank food inflation very quickly and move our inflation closer to single digit. Um, Things like, the automotive policy that has essentially resulted in Nigeria driving some of the most expensive cars in the world. When you look at the dollar value of those cars, they've not really changed abroad. But when you look at how much we buy them in Nigeria, a combination of the FX problem plus the fact that some of them have to pay as high as 75% to clear vehicles have just ballooned the prices of these vehicles. So there are those kinds of policy reversals that need to happen. That's the first.
Yeah.
The second is that there's a there needs to be a very deliberate effort to tackle insecurity. A lot of us don't link security to what we're facing. One of the first reports that we released publicly in SBM is a report called Terror in the Food Basket. And we released this report, I think, in 2015, thereabouts, and where we predicted that because a lot of the people in the middle belt at that time had not been able to plant for about 3 to 4 years. And that place is Nigeria's food basket. That Plateau, Southern Kaduna, Benue, places in Taraba, those places where there were a lot of headsmen attacks as far back as that time. But it was not very publicly discussed as it is now. What said that once the people are unable to produce food, you're going to start seeing food become expensive because this is the food basket of Nigeria. So there's a link between and many of those guys, um, anecdotally, if you check a lot of the people that come to Lagos to come and do domestic work and gate man, house help and the likes, you will find that from about 2015, more and more of them have come from the middle belt, Benue, Southern Kaduna, Plateau, and that's because the economic opportunity, the productivity in that area has tanked because of insecurity in those areas. So security is inextricably linked to um, the changes that need to happen in 2023. So the person also needs to have very clear security. And again, the things that need to be done with regards to security are very clear. If the person has the political will to do it. That's two. Number three is the issue of our debts.
Mm.
Already today, the only positive in that area is that a lot of the debt is domestic, which is ways and means advanced by central bank and domestic bonds and those kind of things. So, which means that likelihood of default is very low. But of course, the euro bonds that we've been releasing are worrisome. But at least most of our debt is domestic. Next person that needs to come in and sanitize our domestic borrowing. CBN cannot continue to break the law, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, by advancing more than 5% of the um, previous year's government revenue as ways and means. That's what the law says. But already CBN has done many, many, many times that amount. That needs to be curbed so that we begin to run down this fiscal cliff that we have fallen off already. So that's sort of another thing that the person needs to do. Fourth is the this obsession with how do I put this now? The obsession with taxing and making especially foreign owned entities feel the brunt of Nigerian government's wrath. Look, Nigeria desperately needs foreign investments. We've seen what foreign investments have done to Nigeria before. We've also seen what it's doing to our peers like Egypt at the moment. Egypt is building 37 cities, transforming the country. Record FDIs are flowing into Egypt. All my Egyptian friends that I know are going back to Egypt. It's very reminiscent of when everybody was coming back to Nigeria in 2008, 2009, 2010, because things were looking up. Foreign investments were coming in, and people were able to come and do stuff in Nigeria. We need to reverse this aversion to foreign investors, to foreign companies. So all of this witch hunting of companies like MTN, like Mnet and Co. They just need to stop. So we need people that will be able to convince foreign investors that Nigeria is now really open for business and ready to, you know, ready to obey the rule of law and fulfill its obligations to foreign investors and not to raise arbitrary taxes or have a situation where the attorney general is raising taxes on a on a publicly quoted company. Those are the kind of things that we very, very quickly need to see change in 2023 so that things can begin to turn around quickly.
So we're talking policy reversal. If you can meet today, policy reversals to sort of like stop trying to control what we have no control over. The exchange rate, like you said, very very important, and also the price of PMS that is sold locally. Insecurity, focus on the insecurity to make sure the cost of food comes down, and of course tackling the debt. That's what Tunde is proposing. That if these three big issues are looked at, that we might just be on the pathway. Tunde, I just think that if Nigeria gets a good CEO and there's confidence, not just international, just local confidence, I just feel that it's just going to be an outpouring of investment decisions. A lot of dollars are going to be released from domiciliary accounts back into the space that will bring the cost of dollars down. Folks will start to do investment, remittances would increase, and then you will see a gradual pulling out of Nigeria by Nigerians, which will then attract the FDI and the FPIs back into the space. We have got to take the hard decisions ourselves and make investments that can create jobs. So those jobs drive consumption, and then consumption then drives productivity and wealth creation. We have to spend right. Like you rightly said, you can't spend 6.4 trillion on just one item, PMS. It doesn't make any sense in any jurisdiction. So these are a few positives that you've given to us. Great. Guys, the floor is now open. Obi is here. Hi, Obi. Maduka is here. His hands are up. If you want to speak, send a DM to Obi or just request. We'll add you on and then you can speak. Tunde is here. He can take your questions. Maduka, thank you for waiting so long. You have the floor. Tunde is here. Unmute and sort of ask Tunde your question. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi, good evening, Kalu.
Let
Thank
me
you
have you, Maduka,
for
let me
the
have you
space.
speak up just a bit. I can hear you, but it's a bit faint.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Much better. Okay, good. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Kalu. Thanks for holding the space. I've been looking forward to it since yesterday. Yeah, so what I want to talk about is really not a question, but a comment on the oil theft and the issues with, with our oil production. So I work in the oil and gas industry, yeah, and in my opinion, it's like a triple whammy for the country. And I say so because one, the assets are aging. So a lot of the production we get comes from both onshore and offshore, primarily from onshore assets, which are aging already. So you have the wells not producing as prolifically as they used to in the past. And then you have the issues with the IOCs and investment. So you're having a reduction in investments in projects, in new wells being drilled. I mean, check the rig count in Nigeria, it has gone down significantly. What that means is that new wells are not being drilled. If you're not drilling a new well, you're not getting more volumes, basically. And that's because of the new ESG groups in the IOC. So you have these environmental groups that are pushing for the move from fossil fuels to renewables. So a lot of those groups have infiltrated the IOCs as investment arms, and they're really pushing those companies to diversify away from fossil fuels. So you have a reduction in the investments coming in for new projects, for new wells to be drilled, especially in Nigeria. When you now slam oil theft on top of that, it's just triple whammy. So it's recipe for disaster. You have old assets, you have limited investments in new projects, new wells, and then on top of that, you have oil theft. There is no way you're going to make any money. So that's my contribution on the oil issue. In terms of what the next president needs to do, I think he really, really needs to win back trust.
True. True.
Trust in the Nigerian people, trust in our foreign investors that we want to come and invest. And he has his work cut out for him to win back that trust. Thank you. I'd like to stop there.
Thanks, Monica. I think that's perfect. I mean, today, I mean, it's the same thing I say. It's all about trust. People right now, and I'm not talking about the individual. The individual. I'm talking about the individual. People right now do not trust the government. They don't pay taxes. They don't trust that the government will spend the money that has been collected as taxes to and for the benefit of Nigerians. So I think whoever comes and wins trust, I think you've solved 99%, I think, because there's going to be a lot of pain to go from where we are with subsidies on PMS and subsidy of the dollar to where we will be, where we will have deregulated market where you can import and sell your PMS at the price that the market determines, which means prices go up. There will be economic pain. But if people trust the government, I think they can take the pain. So this is just my point. Victor, how you doing, sir? You can unmute and ask your question.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good day, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So what I wanted to contribute majorly, the last speaker has contributed it because I think we overestimate this oil theft thing. And what the real problem is that there has been no new investment in oil drilling and expanding capacity by IOCs in the last 10 years because there are lots of forces pushing against fossil fuel development. So we have to realize that, and oil heads are getting old, so they are pumping less and less. So most of the problem are shortings. So it's not really theft. I think we have to understand that problem
But
in that
Victor,
respect.
Victor, I'm
Sorry,
sure.
can I
Today,
respond to that, Carlo?
go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So, um, sort of the analogy I want to use to respond to this is if you're playing a football match and something was supposed to hit a team was supposed to win you 1-0 because that was how much better than you they were. And then by some self-sabotage, your players start doing all sorts of things, and four of your players have red cards. And all of a sudden, you are 5, 6, 7 goals down. So these factors that you raised are global factors, some of them. But I mentioned the Saudi example where they are doing 1 billion daily now that they were not doing before this oil boom. It's different that we're in an oil boom and Nigeria is not able to benefit from the oil boom. So the drop in production, yes, there is and I think I mentioned when we were talking about there's a drop in production because there's not been investment. I did mention it and talked about even delays in policy domestically. That's one of the red cards that we have. So there's the global issue, but delays in domestic policy have been one of the things that have impacted on investment in Nigeria. Just the general security in that area has also impacted onshore in those areas. Policies around selling and all of that. But the big new thing that has happened is the scale of theft that we have now. That's the big new thing. So all of those things are there, but the big new thing that has happened in the past 3-4 years that have made it impossible for us to even maintain our former levels is actually theft. And the scale is for a lot of people, especially people that understand, like people like you guys that work in oil and gas, that understand the logistics of being able to move that volume of oil on a regular basis. It's always very hard to believe the scale of it until you actually see it up close.
Hi, Carlos. Sorry, if you don't mind, can I just add to what Tunde said?
Yes.
Um, let's be clear. The oil theft thing is a terrible thing. I mean, it's organized crime at its worst. Because in the oil industry, the IOCs, the companies typically have overflights. That's how much they spend just to try and protect, the lines that take the oil from the production fields to the terminals for exports. And even with all the measures that are put in place, security, soldiers, overflights with helicopters, some start to use drones. You still have a lot of volumes being taken out unaccounted for. So it's like I said, it's triple whammy. You have the global issues affecting us, and then you then have oil theft on top of that. So, and that's what's really killing us. So we should not overlook the fact that oil theft is happening. You're producing you were able to produce 100,000 before. Now you're producing about 80,000 or 60,000, and someone is taking 40,000 out of that. You're in deep trouble.
And the
Yeah,
numbers started
I
to
agree that there is oil theft. I just wanted to point out that sometimes in analyzing a problem, if we don't categorize the problem, we might overstate the problem. Sure, you understand? I know there is oil theft, but I don't want us to overstate it so that we don't ignore or overlook the real problems. So my second point will be that, look, if we want to talk about the Nigerian economy, I think people like you, me, us, we now need radical ideas. And there is one radical idea that I have that I want to put on the table this evening. Why can't we ban the use of physical naira at all transactions in Nigeria and move every single person to e-naira so that whatever you want to buy or pay for from anybody from anywhere or getting paid, you get paid in e-naira? Why is
so
that impossible?
Victor,
Because
Victor,
what
my
that will
question.
do,
Go ahead, Victor. Go ahead.
because what that will do is automatically automate the economy so that we can track money wherever it is. We can collect the right amount of tax, because with the same size of economy, South Africa is collecting 10 times the tax we're collecting today. So which means that they basically do not have the revenue problem that we have. So is it not possible to automate the economy in a way by saying physical naira no longer exists? Everybody gets paid in e-naira, and government pays everybody, let's say, a salary of 30 or 50,000. Anybody that has an NIN in e-naira monthly, and make sure that they don't use it to buy imported items. Just a
I hear
question.
you, Victor. Victor, I hear you. Just very quickly, I'm going to let if Tony has a comment he can make, but very quickly, in America, in San Francisco, they passed a law like this. They said you have to. They wanted to go right? So that means in San Francisco, you can pay with your phone, you can pay with your watch, you can pay by tapping. You don't need to use cash. And they had to pass a law, or they were forced to pass a law because many folks in San Francisco do not have a phone. Surprise, surprise. Many folks do not have the ability to have an online account. Many folks simply use raw cash. That digital payment looks sexy, but not everyone can afford it, right? In my village, half here, if you do e-naira, that means I have to go charge my phone before I can spend. I get where you're coming from, but I don't know if Nigeria, I mean, China could do it because China really, I don't, that society has is broadly eliminated extreme poverty, right? But in America, there's poverty. In Nigeria, there's poverty. Are we sure everyone would have a phone to do this e-naira? That's just my comeback on that.
E-naira could be done by USSD. Any phone at all can make a mobile money call.
But you have to charge
So
the phone,
that's,
right? You have to charge the phone.
yes, and it doesn't have to be your phone. You can do your own e-naira on somebody else's phone. You just
I
have
should
to
put
have
my
your
num
own
my
code
I should
or
put
your
my
own PIN.
e-naira on your phone. That's not going to work today. No way it's going to work.
Um,
Tunde,
I mean,
what do you think?
so I think my first this thing is one of the things we need to avoid doing is to create policy without thinking about how people will react to the incentives that we are creating. There is no incentive. And people will behave like rational economic beings. So if you do this kind of policy, all you would have done is you would have created a parallel market for cash, a black market for cash. You would have raised transaction costs because people will continue to do the transactions in cash. And because there's an added risk for that cash, there will now be a premium charge for that risk. It doesn't solve any of the problems that we have now. The e-naira exists today. We should ask ourselves if it was something that people found as useful as we think it should be, why have they not adopted it? Why are they still doing the exact things that the e-naira is supposed to do with their mobile banking, their normal bank accounts, with their USSD? Why are people going to POS, all these POS agents around and
I think
using
this is
those
part of the
POS?
problem. India did something similar last year.
It's
People went through a pain for a few
because it
months, but the
solves it.
problem
Yeah, but
is solved today. India does
Victor,
not have
but
the same.
India had
Because because
Victor. India
because
has
those things are
power.
common.
Everyone in India has power. I read a report that almost the whole of India has electricity. I'm just asking the question: if we have to use a phone, I have to
97
charge my
India has
phone.
97% connectivity of power,
Yes, exactly.
and that was done in the Modi years.
It just yeah,
Because
exactly.
people don't trust the government enough to want them to see. We did a report sometime, was it this year or last year, where we talked about informal taxation in the economy. And surprise, surprise, there was a 97% tax compliance in the informal economy to people that they thought were accountable to them. So their unions, their local government guys that they can go to and get things from. So the market women, the organizers, the all of course there's some coercion there. There's no taxation without some coercion. But many of them, when we spoke to them, there was also the element of we know these people. When we, if I'm a bus driver and I have an accident, if I call my union people, they will come through for me. So you were getting about 97% tax compliance in those informal guys to the informal people that they pay to. But none of those guys was paying taxes to the government. So the reason people are not paying tax is not because they don't want to pay tax. It's really because, number one, they just don't trust the government. They don't see a correlation between I'm paying my tax to this government and I'm getting something in return from the government.
So today it's an issue of trust, not system. That even if you implement the
100%.
e-naira thing, no, Victor, hold on. Even if we implement the best taxations in Nigeria, people still don't trust the government. China,
I
Victor,
agree.
China right now, China right now, the guys are not paying mortgages at the moment right now because some banks failed, and to them the system has failed. So they all resolve not to pay mortgage. This is China where they kill people for corruption. They didn't say we're not going to pay taxes. So I think today's point is trust has to come first. If I believe they're going to take my money and buy a truck, a V8 luxury Jeep to Niger Republic, I wouldn't pay tax. I mean, I'm
Guys,
not
we're
saying
throwing out radical ideas that
I
can
hear you.
solve
I hear
our
you, Victor.
problem.
I hear you, Victor.
We
I
want
think we've
to,
heard you
we
out.
know
Yeah,
we have this problem. Trust
I hear
takes
you, Victor.
about a decade to build.
I hear
Okay?
you. Let's
If,
move on
if
to
we
Can I say
destroy
something?
every naira
Hello.
hold on,
cash,
AJ.
if we
AJ, hold on.
destroy every naira cash today, and there is no other way you can exchange goods for value except with a e-naira or electronic money, will people not use it?
But what if people don't have a phone? Tunde, Victor, that's
People
one
will
point I'm
do
making.
trade by barter. See,
People will
if you
not
make
waste it.
e-naira compulsory, people will do trade by barter.
Exactly. Yep, you
We're
can't
saying
force
that
people.
there's no incentive for people to use that currency. It doesn't do anything better for them.
I hear
I
you.
just I just want to say something to buttress the point that you guys are saying about this e-naira thing. It's a very strong example uh, that happened to me. Okay. Good evening, everyone. A quick one. Can you imagine that e-naira started some years back, and I'm currently in the UK, and Flutterwave. Sorry to mention the name of the company. They did something that you send money from the UK down to Nigeria using your e-naira connected to your account. Do you know that UBA, the bank, is not connected to the e-naira platform, and if you pick UBA as your account, if you send money, it hangs. You can't receive it in Nigeria. So even if such a big institution cannot even believe in the in-area system and get plugged into that system, then you understand how that radical idea, though good, very good on paper, will take a long time to work out. So that's just a contribution I want to make at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. Let me have Choco. Choco, hop in here. What's up?
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to also react to Victor's suggestion, and my angle is really from an angle of human rights abuses, possible human rights abuses from that kind of system.
Interesting.
The word that jumped at me was the word track everything. That is very Orwellian and very, very authoritarian in the end. I'm not sure I want that sort of power in the hands of any government, talk less of a Nigerian government that has this, at best, has despotic tendencies, and at worst, obviously, you know the worst, you know the rest of the story. I'm not sure we are there yet as a democracy. I'm not sure there's any country in the world, as a matter of fact, that is there yet in terms of applying, that has all the checks and balances in place.
Let me give you one that is there, and let me also buttress your point. China has the yuan, but China also has the social scoring. So in China, if you are rude or you are not seen as quote unquote a person of the state, then you can't fly. Your mortgage rate maybe go up. So the government could say, well, we don't like your post on Twitter, so we're going to take your notches down, so that way you can't fly on Air Peace or whatever airline again. So that's exactly what you're saying. It's a bit too much power for the government. Exactly. I hear you. Yeah.
Imagine crowdfunding for a political opponent of the of the party in power under that kind of system. So that's not going to work as from that angle, So that's all I wanted to really say.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, let me have real guru. Chinedu Ndibei. Hi, what's on your mind?
Oh, thank you, Carlo. Thank you for the opportunity. This is what I want to say actually. I think we are just pointing at some of the symptoms of the problem we have. I believe that the root cause of the economic problem we have today is because those in power left the decision making in the hands of one man who started bringing up policies that rubbished the economy, and nobody is holding him accountable for that. If, for instance, now there are some policies. One, you brought up the issue of e-naira, and the thing was flawed. The app is not working appropriately. We have bank apps that we can use to do some of these things, and it works. You just collect money, pay it into something, and we are not seeing the result. Again, everybody has been talking about the issue of trust because of those policies that Emefiele is bringing up. For instance, when you look at the banning of crypto in Nigeria, do you know the volume of transaction that Nigerians have done over the months? Supposing we are allowed to do the transaction here in Nigeria without that ban, this money will circulate in our economy, and governments can even tax those transactions and make more money. But we are not looking at this. We are going back to government borrowed money. We borrow money and we are using the money to do school feeding. School feeding might be important in Kano, in Sokoto. It is not needed in Anambra State. Now, what happens is that this money that we borrow to do these things goes into individual pockets. Had it been we borrowed money and government would just establish modular refineries, and within months, we can solve the problem of subsidy. But we're not doing that. We are just a spending problem. I hate when people say you tax people more, tax people more. Who's going to? No, nobody is going to accept that, because the money that you are getting, you are not utilizing it well. Nobody trusts the system. You can wake up overnight and bring up one idea and bring up one policy, and you start implementing. We don't have an economic team. The National Economic Council is not working. We are not hearing from them. The advisory team that the president set up some time ago, the economic advisory team, we are not hearing from them. And one man is seated in CBN there in Abuja, and he's just bringing out policies, printing money. And that's why people are even saving outside the country in dollars. We're just moving money out of our economy, and it's not helping. So I think it's the trust issue and the policy, not actually the oil theft. The oil theft will contribute in its own way, but when we begin to refine close to the point of the drilling with modular refineries, it will limit some of these things and some of these challenges we are facing, and we have less crude oil for people to steal and all that. So it's the policy and lack of trust, and that's why I'm saying this. If APC comes in 2023, the economy is going to collapse entirely, because more people are
I'm
going to
using God
leave.
to beg you.
People are going to invest more outside.
Don't call any politician name here, because they will invade. Just yeah. I
Let
hear
them
you.
invade now. The problem.
No, Tunde, calm down. Tunde, calm down. I hear you completely. Let me just
Thank
take
you.
your point. The point I agree with you on, right? You're talking about trust. I agree with that. But Tunde, when you made this point about folks deciding to go and take the money themselves from the pipeline, like they did in Liberia, Operation Pay Yourself, they are paying themselves directly from the pipeline, right? That's an issue of trust being broken. Let me ask you a direct question. Okay, see, the president, in this saga over the jeeps that we bought for Niger Republic, the Minister of Finance said that the approval was given by the president and that she could not counter the president. There was no oversight from NAS. There was no pushback. The president said spend 1.2 billion and 1.2 billion was spent. Do you have any comment to that as regards how funds are actually being spent in Nigeria? Does that mean the president could come tomorrow and be like, spend 500 billion on school feeding and it will also happen? So let me just hear your take on that.
Oh, absolutely. And it ties into reacting to what the speaker that spoke before you said. Um, and, Emefiele has been a terrible CBN governor. And I cannot believe that I am saying a word to sort of try to balance anything that is said against him. But there are two policy sides that uphold the economy, right? There's fiscal policy and there's monetary policy. And Emefiele's responsibility is primarily monetary policy. And he has failed woefully on that. He has also, to be fair, encroached on some of the fiscal policy sides as well. But a lot of the failures have come from the fact that fiscal policy has been an absolute failure. Nothing sensible, nothing serious has happened on the fiscal policy side so far. Raise taxes, trade policy, all of it has been abysmal. And all of these are executive side things. So when the Minister of Finance, who is primarily responsible for fiscal policy, is able to open up and say that she can't question the president on spending, that tells you the way the government is run currently. It's a Oga has said, let's go and implement, and that probably applies to Emefiele as well. Of course, he adds his own flavor of bad behavior too. But
True.
it's a case of Oga says, we need money. Emefiele says, okay, I can print money. Let me go and print money for Oga. And
So
that's it.
is that not the structure we're talking about? The structure that we say the structure is faulty, where one
Absolutely.
man can wake up and spend money, not for Nigerians, can wake up and spend money that is going to a foreign country without NAS or appropriation, without oversight, just spend money and money spent.
Absolutely. That, I mean, and it's not just on this kind of. I mean, 1.4 billion is a lot of money for me personally, but in the grand scale of things in Nigeria, it's not the biggest money. But let's look at the subsidy issue. Prior to the Buhari administration, subsidy would go to the National Assembly. It will be debated on the floor, and it would have to go into budget appropriation. So everybody knew exactly how much we were paying on subsidy, because it was a budget issue that would be debated at National Assembly level, and people could make inputs, and people could shout, and people could do all that. Under the Buhari administration, subsidies have moved into the NMPC as an operating expense, opaque to the rest of the. And after that, it has ballooned by from 350 billion to 6 trillion. Money that doesn't go to any appropriation, that is essentially discretionary spending. I mean, operating expenses are discretionary spending. Discretionary spending of an opaque entity, which Buhari, as the president, is also the Minister of Petroleum and he controls.
That's
So
crazy.
that tells you that tells you the so that finance minister's pronouncement is a smaller expression of the bigger issue here,
Okay.
where um, right.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Let me get Jonathan into let's just clear the deck a bit. Jonathan, hi. Leah, Jonathan, hi. What's going on?
Hi. So thank you. My name is EA, so it's an I. So quick one. Yeah, so just a quick one. I think of course the issue of trust has been discussed. I think also it's very important to look at the overall political economy in which we are in. I mean, that's in a nutshell, just the nature of the political economy. Yes, it's a rentier state, there's prebendalism and all of that. But also, we also see a real departure from the character and the competence and the capacity that
Mm,
previous CBN governors and ministers and economic managers brought to the table. So that's
true.
why you cannot have them stand up to the president and say,
Mm,
this cannot
that's,
happen.
that's a good.
To say they're even ready to lose their jobs for it. So that's one thing. Of course, the very other important thing is the lack of oversight, the lack of diligence on the part of the National Assembly. And I think that's something we should be looking at in the next elections. Who do we put in there? It's very, very important. One thing I will say particularly also about the CBN is, and even our ministries, and I think this cuts across civil service, and the nature of this government. They value loyalty above merit. Of course, we know about the
Psycho
former
fancy.
character.
Can we use the word psycho fancy of loyalty?
Psychophancy, that's the word, correct.
Yeah, because I'm
Yeah,
loyal.
loyalty can have a positive quality,
Mhm.
but they value that. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Some years ago, I run a non-profit. So we wanted to launch a fundraising campaign that would accept donations from all over the world and blah, blah, blah. And quite a while back, I think PayPal came into Nigeria making all this noise, right? About how PayPal is in Nigeria, PayPal is in Nigeria. I got in touch with the bank, and the bank is like, oh, you know how it works with PayPal and these e-payments. You can only pay money, you cannot take in money from outside Nigeria. I think that's a huge thing that Nigeria needs to fix, right? But if you have people like those running our economy who don't even understand the importance of these things, so I called a contact who was, I think, a director or deputy director in CBN at the time. I say, are you aware that PayPal um, only allows money to go out of Nigeria? It's not allowing funds come into Nigeria. Do you know this guy spent 15 minutes arguing with me that that was not the case? So either they went and signed whatever they signed with whoever or approved whatever they approved without even studying or understanding how this thing
Mm,
works. So I
good
use
point.
that just to say, of course, once I had that experience, there is no way I am going to patronize an e-naira, apart
Mm,
from all the other trust issues, because to me, I don't even trust that you understand what you're doing. One.
mm,
And then two, the circumstances within which this e-naira began to be promoted too, of course, they're suspect for me. Especially we're talking about the human rights issues that someone so raised here. So these are the so-called quote unquote little things like these PayPal agreements or these agreements where we allow certain people come into our markets and we're not really pushing, to also get our own, get people to come in and invest the dollars in here, but we're allowing our dollars go out or our naira go out. That's also an issue. So I think it's very important that we begin to focus very much on who we put in NAS and recognize that the political economy absolutely will decimate our economy if it's not done right. Thank you.
Good point. Thanks. Let me just just run around real quick. AJ here, your hand is up. You have spoken before. What's up, man?
Hi, everyone. Okay, I just wanted to ask some quick questions and little input. The first thing, we're all talking about oil, the oil theft and how it's causing a lot of problems in the economy and all that, and with our cash flow. I want to ask, the Dangote refinery, has anybody found out what's going on? Because I don't understand what's going on, because we've been saying it was going to open in 2018, 2020, 2021, 2022. I don't know. Are they shifting it? Is it now a political thing?
Let's ask Tunde together.
Okay, that's the first question. Then the second question is because of course they talked about fiscal and monetary policy, and they said Emefiele has not done well monetarily, but I don't think it's the man's fault, because they said hold on, they said leadership abhors vacuum, right? Now, if there is no fiscal policy, there's supposed to be a leadership aspect from the fiscal policy angle, and there has been none since Kemi Adeosun resigned. There has been absolutely none. The man is only trying to fill up the vacuum. Somebody needs to tell him, okay, no, this is the way we are going, and he'll follow suit, but nothing whatsoever. So what is going on there? I need answers from those two.
Good questions. Tunde, 2 questions for you. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, the second question is an easy one to answer. You are right that there's no leadership, and I think I said it in my response to something earlier. Why I said on the fiscal side, it has been abysmal. That's the only way. That's the only word to use. It almost feels like the minister it's not very clear to the minister what needs to be done or what the extent of the responsibility is beyond announcing that Nigeria is going on another round of borrowing. It seems like that's all that office has been reduced to, and then maybe doing some of these social something programs. But we've seen finance ministers before, and we've seen what that office is meant to be in coordination, especially with the Ministry of Trade, who are the two people that should be responsible primarily for fiscal policy, the finance minister and the trade minister. None of those two seem to know what to do, which of course explains why an Emefiele has encroached on their territory so much and they don't really care. But it's also because what Emefiele is doing seems to be in congruence with what Buhari's overarching fiscal policy intentions are. So it is accommodated. So you will see where they talk about somebody comes and talks about Nigeria is spending so and so much to import so and so commodity, and like clockwork, you see Emefiele do something that will restrict FX to the import of that commodity. You get, without taking. I remember when they were going to do the one on maize, and in a research work that we did, we pointed out that maize is one of the biggest components that is used in our pharmaceutical industries, and as soon as that restriction on maize happens, you're going to get an upswing in the price of medicine across the country. And it was almost, and you're going, I think we said medicine as well as poultry, because a lot of the feed is also maize based, and a lot of people I remember really fought us at that time, but it happened exactly like that. So there is that. The people that are supposed to be doing fiscal policy don't know what they're doing, and Emefiele is encroaching, but towing the line that is the general strategic direction that President Buhari has impacted.
Let me ask
the first question about
go for it. Continue. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
continue.
the first question you asked about the Dangote refinery. Um, I mean, that project has many challenges. There's a financing challenge. Um, because it's been so overdue and they've had to restructure the loan a couple of times, the loans that have gone into that. So there's a financing challenge. There's also just so it's built as single train, and oil and gas people here. I know there was advice on a different design, but the design is a more difficult one to execute. But will it get done? It will get done. It will just take more time and more money. It has already cost about 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. At the beginning, they said it would cost 9 billion, but I think now it has cost significantly more than that already, and it's still cost. It's still the cost is increasing on a daily basis. What will happen though, and just what I need to dispel is that all that Dangote's refinery will change in terms of petrol supply to Nigeria is supply. So it's probably going to be a lot cheaper, a lot more available. But it's not going to impact on price because Dangote
Well,
has taken dollar denominated debt to build that place from international financiers, and he will need to repay those loans. So if Nigeria is not ready to buy from him at in USD and at the prevailing market prices, Dangote will be forced to ship those whatever he refines to the best places because he needs to service his loans. So we will still be buying
like he's
from
doing with fertilizer today.
absolutely. So we'll need to still buy from him. It will just be a supply issue that he tries to solve. He's not going to solve a
Oh,
pricing problem. So we
wow,
need to dispel that
wow.
very quickly.
All right, Tunde, thanks. So let me get Donald. Donald, what's up? Dog
Hi.
now. Yeah, what's up, man? Go for it.
Hi. Yeah, Carlo, thanks very much for the opportunity. Okay, so just quickly here, I just want to touch on some points here. First one is that I wanted to talk about the restrictions that the banks have made on transactions, foreign exchange transactions within the banks, as one of the reasons why we have all these, dollar being scarce and all of that. I mean, I can't transfer USD to your account, or you can't transfer to my account without the bank asking questions. So again, I wanted to talk about the rise of all these companies that exchange money. I mean, if I want to send money from Canada to Nigeria, I'd have to engage one of those companies. Guess what? Many of those companies are based in Canada, US, UK, and they take their transaction fees. They make a lot of money because there's huge transactions that come from all these transfers, and they pay the taxes to these governments. They pay taxes to US, Canada, UK, all these countries. Nigeria gets almost nothing from it. So what's happening now is that they've literally taken over the job that maybe our banks should have been doing, right? So that's a loss of investment, that's loss of income for the government. Another thing I wanted to talk about was crude oil theft. I think we've talked about it a lot, but in a conversation I had with a reservoir manager of one of the companies that bought some of these divested assets, he told me categorically that they only get 20% of what they pump through the export pipeline to the terminal. Only 20% at most. He said on a good day, we get 20%. So that means a lot. I mean, this is speaking from somebody who is in control of things. And of course, there's some of us who are in the oil and gas know that there are some very notorious pipeline, export pipelines. I don't want to mention this, but there is actually one that is very notorious for this. So again, I did tweet here that this cannot happen without the involvement of security forces. If they want it stopped, it will stop. Jet fuel. So we talked about how the airlines are pulling back and reducing their flights, and the reason being that they can't they can't take their monies out. Another reason is that they are forced to buy jet fuel in US dollars. So they're buying jet fuel in US dollars because they're international flights. And of course, they have to go to the market, source the dollar from the black market, and then use it to pay oil marketers. All right. So that in itself is something that they can't cope with. They just can't cope with it. So they're not buying it in Naira, they're buying it in USD. So big problem. So some of all these policies that our government enact, like they're just meaningless. Now, Tunde, this question is for you and Carlo as a roundup. Okay, one more issue. I was going to talk about procurement. I think many of us remember when someone used to be called due process. Now, the Procurement Act in Nigeria needs to be completely overhauled. Okay, we're talking about buying Land Cruiser vehicles for 1.4 billion. Obviously, the Bureau for Procurement policy, Bureau BPP was not involved in any way in that transaction. All right. If it was, then obviously it would have been beaten out. Nigerians would have, it would have been transparent. But that's not the case. So we don't have a procurement system in Nigeria for sure. Now, the last thing I was going to talk about here is tax. Tunde and Kalu, can you explain to me why we still practice the policy of withholding tax? So if we practice the policy of withholding tax where you do a service for a company and you are paid and the company takes 5% of that amount from you. Okay, FIRS takes 5% of that amount. And at the end of the year, when you've done all your books, you don't even make 5% of the amount that's taken from you from a transaction of maybe 1 billion naira, which is like 50 million. You at the end of the year, you made only 80 million naira as profit, and you pay 30% corporate income tax of maybe 20-something million. Now, FIRS has your 50 million and will never refund that money back to you. They would keep it for the next years. So the question is, isn't this a loss of income, loss of investment for small companies? How do you address this kind of thing? It's a very bad practice that probably we see in only companies in countries like Nigeria. So I'd like to hear from you finance guys, what you guys think.
That's a great question. It's asking withholding tax issue. People get charged, the money is withheld. I know back then, if I remember, I used to have those little receipts, and you could go back and use those receipts to get your monies to reduce your taxes. Do you have any comment on that? Can you really talk about that?
I mean, I think it's a practice that is never going to work, because you are never going to and in our experience in SBM, we've never gotten that money. So I don't know a lot of people. Maybe there will be some speakers here that are able to get that money, because you're supposed to get the money when you present all those receipts, or you're supposed to get a tax break and all of those kinds of things. But it's never really easy with the Nigerian government. I don't see the sense in it, but it's the current law. The right thing for all of us to do is to lobby to change that law. That's the right thing for us to do. And this sort of brings me to one of the things that I like to say when I speak to corporate people, business people. There is a lack of lobbying culture in Nigeria, where we have like a something that everybody in the industry agrees should not be there. But we're not lobbying anybody in the House of Assembly. We're not lobbying anybody in the Senate to try to change that law. Because as long as it's law, there's nothing we can do, even if it's illogical, even if it doesn't make sense. So we need to inculcate, this habit of lobbying. Of course, like Ian said, this also stems from just the quality of people that we put in those places. But even then, I see the quality of people Americans put into their house, into their National Assembly as well sometimes, and I'm like, these are not the very smart Americans I've met, but they're able to use lobbying culture to push some things through. So we need to inculcate it for things like this withholding tax that doesn't make sense. And there are a bunch of them that they keep introducing. Come and pay ITF tax that never really gets used for anything. Come and pay education tax that never really gets used for anything. All of those things, we need to sort of lobby to get them changed. There was another question.
To his own point is that those. Go ahead, Jonah. Go ahead, Elia.
Okay,
What do you say?
Now, I said I had a question on that. When you talked about the corporate, the lack of a culture, lobbying culture by the corporates corporates in Nigeria. How do we get, where do we even start from? You see, because I think this is one of those, what's that thing? Someone has to bail the cat. You know, for decades, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, for example, they've sort of seemed to try to lobby on power issues and so on and so forth, but they've literally given up, it seems to me. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but so much about the economy, a lot of them just close shop and move, or close shop and die off, right? And it's passed on to the next generation of entrepreneurs, and we just keep on absorbing and absorbing and absorbing. And every day, these guys are literally going to tax us to death. I'm sorry, but that's what's going to happen, because every day there's going to be a tax to fund something very questionable, and so on and so forth. So I will ask you, Tunde, and whoever else has experience in this space, where do we start from, and who is going to begin to bail that cat of
You mean the
lobbying
lobbying
on the
to become
corporate
my
side?
my friend used to be a lobbyist in Abuja, and this guy later became a minister in Nigeria. So Nigeria had lobbyists. He was a lobbyist. Was lobbying. He had a card. He was lobbying for ExxonMobil. He was the chief lobbyist, ExxonMobil in Abuja. He later became a minister. Did a very very good job. He's still alive now. I don't know what happened to the lobbyist guy, but there was a Obasanjo allowed it back then. But right now, I'm not
Maybe
really
we
sure
should,
if yeah.
maybe we should be connecting with such people and seeing how we can have a lobby firm. No, because these are the issues. Because if you don't have people who are lobbying for, like, aggressively for power, for water, for industrial parks that actually work, and so on and so forth, we're going to forever be at the mercy of these things and keep going down.
Good point.
That's
Good
my
point. Yeah.
that's my conviction anyway. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
let me just quickly say something to that. Thanks a lot, here. And Kalu alluded to it. The best lobbyists in Nigeria you will find in the oil and gas industry. They know exactly how to get things done through the instruments of government, through all of the arms of government. There's a lot of expertise that is locked up in those guys. Of course, because the oil companies pay better than everybody, so not many people can afford them. But for example, I am aware that the telecoms guys are also beginning to see the need to essentially, what each of them was trying to do before was trying to do it on their own. But there's always a need as an industry to be able to present a lobby that is not identifiable specifically to a firm, so that backlash doesn't go to just that firm, but you
Mm.
present something as an industry lobby, sort of like what the Manufacturers Association used to do, and all of
Yeah.
that. But there are people that do have this expertise. Um, a lot of it is concentrated, like I said, in the oil and gas industry, because again, that's where a lot of Nigeria's political economy is concentrated in.
So let me just let
But
me let me be direct. Right, you guys do these reports out, right? Tunde, you guys do these reports out. I do really a lot of SBM material. How do you guys on your own? How do you guys get, like? I know it's, my name is personal. So how do you guys get paid for this? Is it a subscription service? Someone's asking me on DM that, do you guys do reports? Can they sign up for a report from you guys? How do you guys operate? And if you just maybe talk about the business side of SBM real quick.
let me say the short answer. We're funded by the CIA. At least
Not the FBI. That helps.
that that's what people that don't like us say, that we're funded by the CIA.
Yeah.
But we for our so we have two sides of the business, actually three sides. Um, the way it works is that two of the sides fund the more public facing side. So we do a lot of market research work on the client side for
Yeah.
both private sector and non-private sector guys, government, security, and all of those kinds of things, consulting. That funds, and of course, we also have some relationships with some funders that provide us grants for certain specific work. And those two sides, profits from doing market research work as
Mm.
well as grants, then fund some of our public facing work. So for subscription, we we have a weekly newsletter, we have a daily newsletter, and we have reports that we can I can share an email address, but you can subscribe to our newsletters and you will get all of these things. The email address will be research@sbmintel.com. If you send a mail to that, we will subscribe you to the newsletter.
Or you could also post it on if you send a DM to me or post on the cryo, it will also go out and everyone can maybe like get your information out there. Yeah. If you can send to me, I'll post out, send it to Obi or to myself, or just post in the tweet so folks can just do a follow up after the space is over and all that. That's just the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, that's fine.
Right.
I'll do that.
And I've got Jalil. I don't want to get folks in here to ask you their questions because we might shut down in about, say, 15 minutes or so. We've got about 3 guys here. Let me get Jalil. He's been waiting a while. This is Diary of Perseus. I don't know if that's in Iran. Hi, Jalil. What's up, man?
Hi, Carlo. How are you doing? Good
I
evening.
am very well. Good evening. Yes.
I want to say thank you for this space. I'm a postgraduate student, and I want to also say thank you to Tunde because this space it's like fits into my dissertation. So I'm really grateful. However, I just wanted to lean on a few things which has been said. Tunde talked about um, the opaque government transactions.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that's part of the problems we have. It's not only a federal problem, also the state problem. There are some states that you can never find their budget. It's passed in a day, so you really can't tell where's the policy direction for the economic development of the component unit, which is the state. And then that translates into federal government agencies where you really do not know how government money is, even though it's budgeted, is spent as well. And then something that was very interesting at the time when I was in Nigeria was the automation of government processes. So Mr. Victor, if I got that clearly, was gave like a suggestion about trying to let us use the e-naira. But it just reminded me of something about the government's reluctance to even automate these processes. So let me just wrap up with this. At one time, I was just part of a little group where we suggested the to a government parastatal, the parastatal, the fan that's in charge of the airports. And if you notice that, Carlo, that every time people just drive into the airports and these papers are given, nobody knows how much money is being gotten from there. And, ridiculously, the man said that he could have accepted our proposal, but that he's not going to take it because he's due for retirement. So that was weird. When we probed for that, he said the last time somebody who had this similar kind of proposal tried to implement it, he ended up with a stroke. So he's not going to be the guinea pig for anybody right now. He's got 3 children in college, and he's not going to. He's happy. He just has little time to retire. So those are the things that I think are the bane of of Nigeria. We barely don't have government processes. I wanted to renew my international passport at one time, filled the online form, got to the immigration center, and I was coming several times, come go. And I met one old lady that said, "Oh, my son, come, can I talk to you?" And she said, and I said, "Yes, ma'am." So what's the issue? I said, "I feel this online." And she laughed, you know, and that laughter was like, "Young man, you've just wasted your time." So those are the issues that we have. On the final note, I would like to connect with you because, like I said, this space fits into my dissertation, and I'd like to glean a bit of information from you. Thank you.
Yeah, Tunde is very open, so I'm sure you can send him a DM and all that. They're there. But I mean, Tunde, we're coming back to this structure matter. When we talked about the macro, we started off with the macro, but we're coming back to this structure and trust. It's like what Nigerians are saying the issue is structure, trust, structure, trust. Let me get Osman and Obo. I think it's the last 2 guys, and today we can just maybe talk and then round down the space. So Osman is the speaker. I'm going to get Obingwe to also. I'm going to add him as a speaker as well. Osman, go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
How you doing
Very
today?
fruitful discussion. Great. Thank you very much. Good evening to
Excellent.
Tunde as well. Excellent discussion so far, and we've pretty much touched on pretty much everything in terms of problems. And we can talk about Nigeria's problems from here till tomorrow.
Yeah.
So my own, 2 cents or 2 kobo will be, public sector. I work in the public sector, and to tell you how difficult it is to stay sane in the public sector in Nigeria, it's crazy. However, I think anybody, whether at the federal level, which is the president, governor, local government, anybody vying for office who does not have as his primary objective to reform the public sector is wasting his time in Nigeria. That's my conclusion. That is my conclusion. And by reform, I don't mean, change the human beings or sack everybody and bring. No. It's systemic reform where you create systems and institutions that outlive people. Right? Nobody can just come today and just do things because you're the CEO of a particular government parastatal. Do whatever you want, go and get away with it. Systems that create a culture of accountability. Really, look, human beings everywhere are the same. I used to think Nigeria, there's something unique about us. But after traveling out and engaging a lot of people and with the social media today, everybody's the same. Look, human beings respond to incentives and danger, fear, love, and things like that. We all respond to the same sort of emotions, right? So if you have an incentive to do good, you will generally do good. And there's just the 1% in your population who whatever you do, they will do bad, and that's what the laws are there for. So for us in Nigeria, we have a mindset where we think we can regulate everything. We have a mindset where you have markets, but you put, you just wish yourself into a regulatory environment where you think things can happen without. You create arbitrary opportunities, people are going to take advantage of it, whether you like it or not. And even if you're an angel, you will do it. So there's a mindset change that needs to happen, but it needs to happen through public sector reform. That's my, my 2 cents today. I really want to happen on this. Anybody who is involved with any politician, campaigning, whether you're on the campaign team or you're in the strategy team, whoever, this is my preaching, right? Focus on public sector reform, right? We do these policies. The desk officers, we are the ones that draft these things. We form committees, we do this. The CEOs don't read it, right? They'll read the first summary and approve whatever it is you tell them to approve, as far as there's probably some money to be made. And or if there's no money, they'll find a way to make their money somewhere else. So if you reform the system will work. The CEOs can steal a little bit of money, but the system can work. Who told you there's no corruption in America or even Scandinavia for that matter? If you watch Scandinavian news, you will see frauds and scandals, right? But their scandals never stop them from the big picture, developing their country and making sure that the country works. Our problem is that we focus, everybody is in for himself and, and the system sort of encourages, a zero-sum game, all or nothing, right? You look at the security agencies. Do you know one of the fundamental issues with the security agencies? I just wanted to, just put this out. Just today, I was somewhere and I was speaking with somebody who is in the security agency. And he said, do you know that there's competition between the intelligence agencies and the execution agencies, which is like the military, right? So if intelligence comes from a fundamentally intelligence agency to a defense-oriented agency, I don't want to be calling names, they won't use it simply because, these guys will take credit for it. They won't use it. They'll say, we'll use our own intelligence. And that's how things are happening. So, so public sector reform, public sector reform, public sector reform. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Excellent comments there. It's still back to that structure and trust. Tunde, it's looking like we're having a trend here. I always say that the economy is easy to fix. People are like, the economy is tough, it's hard. I'm saying the economy is the easy part to fix. But if you fix the economy and people don't trust the government, they're not going to pay taxes, they're not going to invest. If the structure is not fixed, then you're going to have a president who will wake up and say, hey, I want you to spend 1 trillion in the Republic of Equatorial Guinea because I want to support piracy. So let's go build schools and the rest in Equatorial Guinea, and that's how money is going to go out. So I think it's that same theme coming along. Let me just get Obinwe to speak, and then we can sort of like round up the space again with Tunde. Obinwe, you've got the floor. Unmute and go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Kalu. I've really enjoyed the session. Right, so I wanted to just highlight some key points that I've been pondering on. I think we have, maybe 5 or 6 months before, 5 or 6 months before the election for 2023. I think one of the major issues that no one is really hammering on is just how difficult it will take to actually, reverse the current situation that we're in. The CBN had issued about 16 trillion from 2015 till 2022 this year, and reversing all of the damage that has been caused would take an enormous amount of effort. I think many of the upcoming candidates are not actually hammering on this. They are skipping this aspect that, for us to reform anything, for us to achieve, for us to reduce the devaluation, for us to achieve a better economy, there will be an enormous amount of pain that will come while we try to achieve all of that, because things like subsidies would have to be removed completely for us to be less dependent on loans that we've been taking on end from different foreign bodies and from also CBN too. So things like subsidies will have to be removed. Then basically it's just reforming, just informing the entire public that for us to achieve the greatness that we need, there's going to be a lot of pain that will come to achieve any of this. A lot of pain. So the first few years after whoever takes over from 2023 is not going to be funny. There's no magic that is going to happen for you to drop from 600 and whatever 623 to where were we before this government came in? I think we were at 400 or 300. For you to drop to that level, the amount of pain that will come through the entire that period, it will obviously there will be a lot of consent.
I hear you, but I mean,
Consent.
there's going to be pain, right? But I'm not. I don't think. Just to be clear, I'm not against paying subsidy. I'm against subsidy on imports. If we want to pay, this is going to be controversial. If we're going to pay Dangote a subsidy so that we can get the PMS from Dangote refinery and EPZ to Nigeria, I don't mind that if it's going to, the subsidy or the employment is Nigerian workers working in Nigeria, that we're going to get this cheap diesel to power the economy. I don't mind. This problem of importing, we export crude, import PMS with 6 trillion, it can't work. The pain is in paying that subsidy. I think Nigerians are not costing the equation properly. To them, the pain is that they're going to pay more at the pump. You are already paying 6 trillion. So you're not going to pay more at the pump. When you increase the payment at the pump, you are reducing the 6 trillion you are already paying. So right now you're paying 4 trillion, right? Because you are paying nothing at the pump. So to you, oh, I'm not paying for PMS. You are. When you pay for PMS, that's the no school in your neighborhood. That's the no hospital in your neighborhood. That's the debt that the government has got to borrow because there are no revenues coming in. So you are already paying that 4 trillion. And if you pay more at the pump, you reduce the 4 trillion subsidy that Nigerians would have paid. The problem is trust. This stuff I'm saying, people get it, but no one trusts the government. If you remove the subsidy, the government will spend the money. That's what you will get, and there's no comeback to that. If someone tells you that, you can't come back to that. Tune, what's up? You're muted.
Oh yeah, so I have a couple of thoughts just to try and close out.
Yeah.
So I think Yoruba people have a saying that if you say we've not seen something like this before, then you're just trying to scare us. So we've been here before in Nigeria, probably just as bad. And we have a model to follow, actually. So when Obasanjo took over in 1999, Nigeria was probably just as bad or worse than it is now. And if you think about it, Nigeria had security challenges, and the people that were the security challenges were actually people in the army who were likely to plan another coup. It had massive debts. The oil prices were low. It was an international pariah state. There were many things there was rife corruption that was carried over from the military era. There were no structures. The financial system, the financial sector was weak. It was fragmented. There was nothing, if you looked at that time. What Obasanjo came in with was he had he had political will and was able to engender confidence domestically and engender confidence internationally that made the international guys trust us to give us a break with regard to debt forgiveness and all of that. But domestically, that also made people believe that Nigeria could get better and was about to get better. So the issue of political will that then brings in the right people and gives them the backing to do the necessary things is one of the most crucial things for the phase that Nigeria is at the moment. Someone that has political will, that can bring in the right people, and that will, it doesn't even have to be smart, the smartest person. There were many things that Obi would have been, Obi, the economic team, Okonjo Iweala, even Soludo, and all of them might have been saying at that time that were not 100% clear to Obasanjo, but he gave them all the political backing and political cover that they needed to do what needed to be done. If you look at all the inflation management tools that we have in our arsenal today, the inflation management structure, all of them were put in place by that team. And of course, one of the reasons we have these issues is that Emefiele and Co have ignored most of those frameworks and structures, like the Fiscal Responsibility Act. So that's like when Usman talks about public sector reforms. If we think about the public sector reforms that were done under Obasanjo, they were significant public sector reforms. Even the Bureau for Public Enterprise that we're talking about was under Obasanjo. It's just that these guys have chosen to ignore it. But if they follow that institution, we will not have some of the situations we're having now. If they follow the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we will not have some of the issues we're having now. And many, many, many more like that. If they took things like the MTEF, the medium term economic framework more seriously, we will not have some of the issues we're having now. So these are the template is clear on what needs to be done for Nigeria. And it's not just Nigeria. We had an example in Egypt, who, at the time when Buhari was taking over, another not so gentleman was taking over there, General Sisi, 7 years ago. And by having the political will and taking the hard decisions and then having clear vision and backing the right people, the guy has practically transformed Egypt. And like I said earlier in this call, virtually all my Egyptian friends, I have a couple of Egyptian friends that are in Dubai, and those guys are living Dubai. They left Egypt for Dubai when Sisi took over because they were not sure what was going to happen. They're all going back to Egypt. All of them, four of them, are all going back to Egypt because they see their country is going in a certain direction. And you cannot take away the impact of the human capital that diaspora people returning to the country with all of their knowledge, all of the capital they are bringing, all of the networks they are bringing to bear will have on a country like Nigeria. Again, we have seen this happen before. The highest period of growth that we had in Nigeria was from 2010 to 2014. And that was right after a lot of people came back into Nigeria with all of this human capital that we're talking about. So there is a lot that we need to think about when we consider who are going to vote next year. We need to look at who has political will and the ability to assemble the team and take the hard decisions. The second thing I wanted to point out is something that doesn't get discussed too much. 70% of the things that will make Nigerian lives better is controlled by the state government. So all of the basic education, healthcare, many of the things that will make Nigerian lives better, water, many of the roads that people travel on, many of the things that will make the day-to-day life of the Nigerian better is controlled by state governors. But many people don't pay as much attention to state governors as we pay to the federal government. We need to be a bit more circumspect in What is the policy that this state government person, what is the capacity that this state government person, this person that is running for office on the state level, what are they bringing to the table? And can they fix these basic issues, basic education in my state, healthcare, basic healthcare in my state, grow or attract the right kind of investments into my state. All of the things that are on the concurrent list that this person can do. Does he have the capacity to attract the capital to do them? That also needs to go into our thinking about these things, because the federal government is far away and there are many things that are really not in their remit to do. That is the responsibility of our state governments. I think those are sort of the 2 points I wanted to make in closing. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Yeah, and Tunde, just before I let you go, right, I want to emphasize the point you're making about Egypt. Nigeria, look at Egypt. They had this massive riot. They had the political upheaval, the loss of foreign capital. They had the depreciation in their dollar. They had the insecurity, the food crisis. Literally, they had the same thing that we had, but they took a different path. They devalued, they attracted foreign direct investments. They have a strong, steady hand in governance. And today, they built a power plant. I posted it on Twitter. They built a power plant in 18 months for about 18,000 megawatts. 18 months. Look at what they're doing. They built their own railway for the Trans-African Railway. Look at what they did in Egypt, And like you said, Obasanjo also showed he inherited in 1999 Nigeria that was divided because of the bad elections. No growth, high inflation, high debt. Almost the same thing in 1999 is what we have now in 2022. So the next president has really has a playbook to go back to. You have to address that debt. You've got to create growth. You've got to create opportunities. And the private sector has got to come back and play in the economy, not the government. I remember Tunde, when Obasanjo was the president, Nigerians were coming back from the abroad, back to Nigeria, not sending money home. People were coming back to Nigeria and taking jobs. We had the reverse of the brain drain. People were leaving the US and UK, coming back here, taking jobs in banks, in public service to serve. Now is the reversal. All the taxpayers, the young, educated, trained Nigerians are being quote unquote stolen by Canada. I don't blame the folks going, but they are being taken, right? And these are the future. These are the guys that are going to create the jobs of tomorrow. So, you've given us that. It's for us to go think about it. We say elections because that's a big roadblock up ahead. If we get that right, we've solved a big issue. I would say, guys, go vote for the president that you think will create opportunities for you, your business, and your family to thrive. I'm a business guy, right? There are other things you might have, but I would say vote for the guy that would create opportunities. If everyone has opportunities in Nigeria, everyone will make it. We're not lazy. We simply do not want the government arresting us if we are walking the street with a laptop or taxing us because the government is inefficient. We just want a government that will get out of the way and allow us to create wealth and feed our families. The government can't do it. Get out of the way. Let's do it. We'll pay you the taxes after we have done it. It's not too much to ask, really. That's what I think we all need. So, folks, I'm up there. Tunde go. Thank you also so much. Obi, thank you so much for hopping in here. I know it's been a very, very quiet, quote unquote, session today, but I do appreciate you joining. Guys, Tunde has been here for about 2 hours from SBM Intelligence. Follow him, follow SBM. I get most of my in-depth real research from SBM. They are wonderful. Him and his partner checks their Cheta. You guys also know him. Good guys to follow and all that. And guys, don't forget about, if you also want to read about personal finance, also do get my book. The book is right there on my profile. I would appreciate if you can get a copy and give a gift to someone. It's written just for you to understand personal finance, and that's just really my own personal goal for doing all of this, to get personal finance out there so that we all learn and we all become better at managing money. All right, guys, thank you so much. I think all that is left for us is to say, hey, guys, go Go enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next week. Next week, guys, I have a great surprise. I'm trying to get a guest to the show, and it's not going to be one simple question: can Nigeria survive without crude oil? I'm bringing this guy. He's going to talk to us about non-oil, not just non-oil, but non-oil business. What can you get into? What can you import? What can you export? And he's talking from a very, very high macro level. He's been at the top end of the business and the governance in Nigeria. So it's a guy you want to listen to, a guy you want to bring your notebook and take notes. I want to get him in here, not next week. Next week, I'm going to be in Atlanta. If you can join me, please do. But the other week, we're going to have him here. Bring your notebooks. I think that's going to be on the Saturday of the 20th. Yes, the Saturday of the 20th. Try to join us, and we're going to talk about the non-oil sector in Nigeria. Can Nigeria survive without crude oil? It's going to break it down for us. Come with a notepad. You will not regret it. Thanks, Tunde. Thanks, Obi.
Thanks everyone for listening in. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Excellent. Obi, I haven't heard your voice today. I gotta hear it. All right, guys. I'm gonna shut down 5, 4, 3,